Exclusive. Battlefield 6 is undergoing franchise biggest playtest ever to prevent another disastrous launch. That is a bold headline. This is by Tom Henderson. For you guys who don't know Tom Henderson, he is a well-known video game insider. I couldn't even begin to tell you what channels he's in nowadays, but whenever I was really big into gaming news, which was probably like 3 or 4 years ago at this point, his name came up all the time. And that's because he just is connected with so many people in this space that he gets a lot of tips, he gets a lot of hot leads, and very clearly, he's got an exclusive here. So let's just take a look at what he's saying. So Battlefield players have had a reasonably tough time with the franchise these past few years. 2018's Battlefield 5 launch was a disaster, but 2021's Battlefield 2042 was worse, pushing a lot of Battlefield fans away from the franchise. But now, with just a year until the next major installment in the Battlefield universe set to release, EA and DICE have a lot of making up to do. Officially, EA has said all of the usual buzzwords you'd come to expect in its financial calls to promote the next game, from innovation to groundbreaking. An interview with IGN earlier this year with head honcho Vince Zampella confirmed Insider Gaming's past report that the franchise was taking a back-to-its-roots approach with 64 players, all-out destruction, and a modern setting. It all looks promising on paper, yet the scars of the past still burn today, with its community and fans of the franchise still apprehensive about the future. Considering the franchise's last 2 blunders, it's understandable, but this time EA and DICE seem to be all in on ensuring it doesn't happen a third time. On a funding front, the next Battlefield has the most resources in the franchise's history. It's actually a bit shocking. 4 studios are currently working on Battlefield: DICE, Motive, Criterion Games, and Ripple Effect. And more importantly, EA and its studios seem more interested in gaining player feedback this time around. Of course, it's not uncommon for games to have playtests during development. Almost every game has them at one point or another, but this time around things are different. Sources say that playtests with external players are happening much more frequently than in past installments, and the amount of data and feedback collected is the most the franchise has ever seen in history. From small feedback sessions to large-scale player tests, Battlefield is now taking the much-needed player-first approach. It's an approach that we'll see continue to be played out coming to the start of the year, and it's understood that EA and its studios have been eyeing up the return of Battlefield community test environment, but to what scale that's incorporated at this time is unclear. So, Battlefield, learning from their past mistakes, is trying to make up for that by actually involving players in their games. What a shocking phenomena. I don't know what these major companies do on a daily basis, but it is wild to me that a company like an EA or a DICE that has so many resources doesn't have a very clear and defined plan to engage with the community. This is something that has perplexed me about the gaming universe for such a long time. We have been in Discords with developers that are super keyed into their audience and know exactly how to communicate with them and connect with them. Now, I get it. Battlefield, Call of Duty, FIFA's, the big games that attract tens, if not hundreds of thousands of players on a daily basis, have a lot of inputs. If you open up the floodgates to all of those players, you're going to get all of that feedback. And for the most part, developers probably don't want that. The feedback is not actually valuable. So you need to come up with an actual plan to engage with the community. I think back to like our V Rising days when we covered that. The V Rising team, incredibly responsive, really good at least listening to player feedback, not necessarily implementing it at a fast pace, but again, they have their own path for their game. They were very clear about that path, and they approached the game with that path in mind. Battlefield is such a hot pot for all these different types of players to come into the mix and disrupt things. They're continuing to try and innovate because they have to stand out from Call of Duty, but they can't innovate to the point that they're isolating or almost alienating players that are there for kind of the Battlefield classic experience. But a modern, massive Battlefield game needs to stay true to their roots to a degree, but more importantly, they have to listen to their community. That is the key for them to be successful, is to listen to their community. And I'm not saying they have to listen to every decision that the community makes, right? That's probably would stymie innovation. But man, at least listen to them, hear what they have to say, and establish channels for them to provide that feedback. And, based on what Tom Henderson is saying here in this report, it sounds like they're doing a lot of playtesting early, which is really great. They're going to get all that initial feedback about, how weapons feel and how different objectives feel and how maps feel, all the things that they need to kind of build the base of the game. They're getting that early, which is really important. But once the game is kind of more public, they do need to start engaging the broader community and figuring out ways to work with them, listen to them, and incorporate kind of their feedback into the development of the game so that this upcoming launch for Battlefield 6 is not a disaster.